Hello, everyone. I'm actually not going to roast WorldCoin today. I've done rather a lot of that. And actually, one of the things I wanted to do is kind of move beyond that kind of like moaning about the bad stuff, and it is bad stuff. But yeah, I'm kind of interested in how we can kind of make more of a movement out of this. So this talk is about assembling the cypherpunks of the future. How can we turn this into a real revolution, if you like? I'm going to start with a bit of a retrospective. The Cypherpunk manifesto was created a long time ago now, 1993. And the world has changed quite a bit. And I also wanted to sort of, take stock of what the industry's like at the moment and whether we're living up to the punk name. So I thought it might be interesting to look a little bit back at where the name comes from. And look at the subcultural movement of the punks and see how we can be inspired by that. And then maybe looking at the kind of what it means to be a cypherpunk in the sort of modern age. So, well done, everyone. You survived another bear market, most of you. It was pretty horrible, wasn't it? This industry's not easy to work in, right? Because periodically, every few years, it washes out. And you can't find a user or money unless you suck up to VCs for love nor money, and it's really, really difficult. And yeah, we're in a world now where some of our current adversaries have just been foiled. So Gary Gensler here is about to be looking for a job, and that's good news for crypto, and things have changed quite a lot. And the cypherpunks were right. If you look back at the original Cypherpunk manifesto, it very clearly says that cryptographic technologies will take over the world. They will be everywhere, and they were right. And we'll be right again. But this is a very interesting moment in time, and it's about to get very real, I think. So let's dig into the words a little bit and see what they mean. In 1993 was basically the dawn of the internet. I was quite surprised by this. I looked it up last night. In 1993, there was 2,000 websites in the world. And today there's 1.8 billion websites. So this movement originated at a time when the internet was very, very young, and we understood what it was going to be. Like, these people were visionaries, and they could see where it was going to go. And the cypherpunks were worried about sort of creeping surveillance, but they had a knowing that cryptography was and will always be important. So this is the first line of the Cypherpunk manifesto. Privacy will always be necessary for an open society in the electronic age. Necessary being the operative word. I've sort of thought about this a lot, and I don't think we have a possibility of a free and open society unless there is cryptography. The power of centralized power will always want to control. And privacy is a very real and necessary function of a society that works. So as I go through this talk, I'm going to sort of drop a few statements and then grumble at them if you don't believe them to be accurate. Because I'm going to try and dig out of the Cypherpunk manifesto a bunch of statements and see if we believe in them. This one should be relatively uncontroversial. Cypherpunks believe in privacy. No grumbles about that one. So back in 1993 again, this was the year of the Clipper chip. So the NSA decided to build a physical device, a physical chip that would put in all devices, which would give essentially the intelligence agencies the ability to backdoor every cryptographic transaction. So it had an escrow system that allowed them to say, yeah, okay, you can have cryptography unless we want to see what's inside it. And the movement was very much started out of a rebellion against that. And actually, Phil Zimmerman here, this cool guy on the right, nearly got into a lot of trouble. So Phil was investigated criminally for violating export laws of cryptography as munitions, and was potentially in very serious trouble. Like, this was scary stuff to be involved in. And he did something incredibly brave. And he released something called the PGP source code and internals. And it was all the stuff you needed to do to build PGP yourself anywhere in the world. And it proliferated all over the internet, everywhere. And in the Cypherpunk manifesto, it says, cypherpunks write code. We publish our code so that other fellow cypherpunks can practice and play with it. Our code is free. So, cypherpunks open source their code. Again, do we agree with that? Just about. All right. So, again, 1993, this is what a modem looked like. Obviously very different to where it is now. And the cypherpunks were anti-regulation. And they believed that regulation on cryptographic software was anti-human. And they believed that we had a right to transact anonymously, and they were defiant. Do we agree with this one? Cypherpunks deplore regulations on cryptography. And again, this is not necessarily the zeitgeist in crypto at the moment. We're all talking about regulatory clarity, and we want systems of regulation. And it's being mindful of who's doing the lobbying. People are lobbying for regulations from within crypto that aren't necessarily aligned with the affordances of the technologies, right? So it's important to remember this one. And just to prove I haven't just made that one up, that's actually in the Cypherpunk manifesto. Cypherpunks deplore regulations on cryptography, for encryption is fundamentally a private act. So if we call ourselves cypherpunks, we should be pretty much on message with that. And they were also quite defiant. So they were like, because some may disagree with our goals, we're not going to change our course. So cypherpunks are rebellious.
Yeah, I'll kick it off.
And
Nathan,
yeah, so
I am an applied cryptographer that's been.
I don't think we are yet.
Ethereum.
I think I've actually been rather disappointed with quite a lot of the way the industry has shaped up over the last few years. It kind of got pretty unrebellious, and I think we're missing the punk in our cypherpunk. And does anyone know much about punk music? I want to give good punk fans. Any punk fans in the house? I've just been listening to punk music a lot this week, thinking about this talk, and it's got an energy to it that I feel is what we kind of need to tap into now. And it emerged in the kind of 70s in the UK. It was a pretty grim place at the time. The youth saw no future, the economy was poor, inflation was high, class division was prominent, racial tensions were high, and the government was disliked. Which sounds exactly like the UK right now. So we are basically back in this context, certainly in the UK. And basically the music was nothing like reality. And what the punks did was create a response to the mainstream industry. The industry itself, the music industry at the time, was bland, depressing, overproduced, and totally didn't reflect any of the culture that was on the ground. And punk emerged out of that context. It was a response to society who felt lost and didn't feel like their voices were heard. I think we need to do the same for our industry. The industry is kind of boring. I think it's awash with kind of greedware. The biggest app at the moment is explicitly vaporware driven. And I think we're missing the bite that this industry needs. So cypherpunks are anti-establishment. Do we agree with that one? We're getting there. So the other thing, so the punks were all about autonomy and individuality, which again, I think is rather on message to us. They believed in going their own way. They pushed boundaries on speech. They championed individualism. And I think we should not be afraid to do the same as well. This song by The Clash, White Riot, all the power is in the hands of people rich enough to buy it. White Riot, I want a riot. White Riot, a riot of my own. This was in response to a riot in Notting Hill Carnival, where the black community rioted with the police. And Joe Strummer wrote this song literally asking for a white riot. And it could be this song right now would get Joe Strummer in jail in the UK. We've just locked people up for 3 years for speech online. And, you know, supposedly inciting to riot. This song is much more of an incitement to riot than anything that just sent people to jail. So actually, a song that was released over 30 years ago could not be released now. It's a regression of speech. So I think cypherpunks believe in free speech. You agree with that one? All right. And again, this is in the manifesto, the freedom of speech, even more than privacy, which is an interesting statement, is fundamental to an open society, and we do not seek to restrict it at all. So cypherpunk is a freedom of speech movement, and we need to use it. The other thing that I think we can learn from the punk movement itself, it was do it yourself. The punks didn't have access to record labels, they didn't have distribution channels, they didn't have marketing teams, they didn't have PR teams. And the cypherpunks, as they are currently now, are in a pretty similar situation. We don't have the distribution channels, we don't have access to the VCs generally. And in fact, some of the things that they were working on were banned. So the Sex Pistols album, Nevermind the Bollocks, which is a naughty word in the UK, certainly in the 70s, they weren't allowed to sell their records in some record stores at the time. So they hacked. They made zines and built their own distribution channels, and they hacked things together and distributed it themselves. And I think that's what we need to do. So cypherpunks hack. We do it ourselves. We put it together. We don't wait for a $10 million raise in order to get things done. And there was an authenticity and a rawness to this. So they found their voice. This was a shop in London called Sex. There was 2 shops. This one's by Malcolm McLaren. And they only lived for a few years, but they sold punk clothing and fashion. And that's all it was. But the punk movement went completely global. And there was punks all over the world. So from very small origins, from very small movements, big movements can become. So cypherpunks ship culture. And this is one of the things that I think we've somewhat been missing. I think we're starting to see it in meetings like this. But the crypto at the moment is a bit of a cultural wasteland. And I think we need to find our voice and our message that is more than just code. So, right now, where are we at? So, Eric Hughes was right in the Cypherpunk manifesto. Cryptography will spread all over the world. We're here, right? There's tens of thousands of people in Bangkok. There's millions of people slinging digital signatures all around the world. They might be buying meme coins with it, but they're still using cryptography. And I think the cypherpunks would be pretty pleased with the adoption at this point, but not necessarily sort of culturally. But yeah, I think, if you look back, it's worth reading the manifesto and thinking about the privacy context at that time. We don't have dial-up modems anymore. We have a surveillance system that is AI-powered. And we need privacy much more than ever. And I think it's a big mistake that we could make to think that we've just won. We have not won. There's no guarantee whatsoever that the new context is going to like what we're doing. Crypto is anti-establishment. And it's always worth remembering that whatever power structure is in place, whatever regime is in place, they're not necessarily going to like the outcomes that this brings. One of the things that I think we need to do in order to sort of broaden our base a little bit is start to think of permissionless systems as cypherpunk, which I think is already the case. Vitalik is cypherpunk, Ethereum is cypherpunk, permissionless systems are cypherpunk, and anonymity is not necessarily a hard requirement of these systems. I think sometimes we can come across as a bit hard line, and I think it can scare some people off. And I also think just technically, I think it creates a barrier to entry for our tooling in the market. I think if we start to look at things around permissionlessness and the affordances of public blockchains, the radical transparency that comes around from things like DAOs is one of the biggest superpowers that we could ever release on the world. Imagine your banks, if we could see inside it. Imagine Sam Bankman's treasury, if we could see inside it. We need to be thinking about ways where we can leverage radical transparency and think of it as a cypherpunk. And importantly, this is one framing of the privacy narrative in cypherpunk. Privacy is the power to selectively reveal oneself to the world. That's in the first paragraph, the Cypherpunk manifesto. And I think we somewhat get hooked up on that everything needs to be anonymous. Privacy is about choosing when to be public and when to be private. So one of the things that I think we should do is broaden our church a little bit. And I think we should be uniting the tribes, if you like, under our Cypherpunk banner. I think solarpunk philosophy is very much a cypherpunk philosophy. And this is almost a continuum between lunarpunk and solarpunk, where we've got hard privacy going into the dark forest on one hand, and we've got radical openness and radical transparency on the other, which allows us to do things like revolutionize governance systems. And the only way we're going to do that is if we build them open first. And one of the things I would like to see is us building things and treating privacy as an ossification. We get to private systems when we found ones that worked. And we can get stuck trying to create the perfect ZK code base when actually we can be just shipping and then essentially turning things dark later on. So cypherpunks are radically open when they choose to be. How do you feel about that one? Good? All right. So yeah. The other thing to note, everyone's getting very, very excited about Trump coming in. He's going to pump our bags and all that sort of stuff. There's absolutely no guarantee that this new regime is going to be comfortable with permissionless systems. And if you actually looked at Trump's ICO, the man did an ICO in the run-up to his presidential election, which is absolutely insane. Sounds great, right? Bring back the ICO. But Trump's ICO, you had to KYC, and this is the future of the internet if we don't defend permissionlessness. You will be asked what region you're from, and the internet will be gated and balkanized based on your origin. This is exactly the horror story of the internet that Tim Berners-Lee was worried about 20, 30 years ago, and we're starting to see it. So this regime does not necessarily do that, and the token was non-transferable. It wasn't a token at all, and that's why, given the man is the biggest influencer in the world, only sold 1 billion of the 20 billion tokens that he was trying to sell. So treat transparency as practice before ossifying hard privacy systems. It's permissionlessness that we need to defend. That is the first order of business. So cypherpunks believe in permissionlessness. Do you agree with that one? Good. So what else? I think that we've got to get into the mindset that VCs are not going to fund this. I know this. Anything that feels cypherpunk, a little bit edgy, the VCs don't really like it. A lot of the tooling stays to one side. We're in a market structure which is dominated by venture capital. And in fact, it's not really venture capital because no one leads around. So everyone just waits and follows. And whoever wants to take the risk on something that's a bit edgy doesn't make a move, right? So we need to go our own way. Did anyone see this advert from Solana recently? It was called Build for Users and Not VCs. And a little skit about how hilarious it is that everything's infrastructure and there's no apps. How funny that is. Sponsored by VCs, ironically. So yeah, we need to find our way on how to do this. And we need to get to a point where we need to crowdfund. And I think tokens are the answer. Tokens are the crypto superpower. Every single part of this industry is being powered by tokens. And we are quite a way. Now, I know Darkfires are non-DAOs. It's a very early, basic primitive. We will get private DAOs in the future. We will get private crowdfunding, but it's going to be a while. So I think we should be using what is available to get it done. And I want our cypherpunks to get some money so they can build and don't have to suffer through the next bear market, which will happen because we'll blow everything up again, almost certainly. So cypherpunks launch tokens. Do we agree with that one? A little bit edgier on that one, aren't you? Not sure about that one. I think it's the way that we can take our future into our hand. Tokens are basically speech. Meme coins are like tokenized thoughts, right? So the pump.fun is actually quite cypherpunk. No one's setting up an LLC behind each of those tokens. So yeah, let's find ways to do it. Also, writing code cypherpunks write code, but writing code just got a lot easier. And And now you can do it yourself. Do it yourself is a very real strategy. And actually, the ZK is almost like a toolkit, cryptographic toolkit. And we will be able to hack together cryptographic tooling very easily, very soon. I will say, do not use OpenAI or Anthropic to do anything cypherpunk. Anthropic has just done a deal with Palantir to sell surveillance technology to the NSA. And the NSA is on the board of directors for OpenAI. This is, if you look at these models, this is the speech of the establishment. So we need to be moving, we need to be shipping, we need to be using AI, and we need to be burning our own compute to do it. So cypherpunks burn compute. And we build tools, not empires. I really advise you to go and look at these wonderful sort of toolkits that have been crowdsourced throughout this run up to this. Most of them are not private systems. Most of them are just open systems that you can run locally yourself. And this is what we need to be heading towards. So just to wrap up, cypherpunks don't just write code. We need artists, creatives, writers, thinkers, philosophers. All of these people need to be welcomed within this movement. And we need anyone that shares our values to feel like they can join in. We need to gather more people to our cause. We need to find ways to bring people into the house. We need to recruit, and we need to go viral. And just leave you with this song by Sham69. If the kids are united, they will never be divided. So we need to, cypherpunks, assemble. Thank you very much.